to Eric's podcast. Dive into conversations about life, family, and business with your host, Eric. Whether you're looking for practical advice, personal stories, or just a little inspiration, Eric's got you covered. Tune in every week to join the journey and get ready to elevate your game. Now, here's your host, Eric.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Eric's podcast. I'm your host, Eric, and today I am joined by Tara, who has 15 years of experience as a serial entrepreneur. She uses real estate to rejuvenize communities and also has created a program to teach kids entrepreneurship. Thank you so much for joining me. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, what have you been up to this week?
This week, I've actually been on a few podcasts. Today I have two set, and I've also been to a couple properties doing walkthroughs because we actually just acquired another property this week, so we started demo on it, and I do a walkthrough with my brother, who's my partner, and I kind of do the designing end of it, right? So I go through with him and let him know what I want done and what I feel is best, and then he actually handles the operation side of making whatever vision I have happen. And then other than that, I actually have a lot of meetings this week because we're meeting to figure out how we're going to move forward thoroughly with educating the McKeesport area on passive income, generational wealth, all those things. We're actually meeting with a local nonprofit called Augerly and seeing how we can partner with them as well. And this initiative of really trying to get, into the community in many different ways.
So, what is your passion? What's your passionate side around community? Like, why are you? What's the focus goal here?
Yeah, so my focus goal, the big goal, is to create generational wealth within the entire community. And sometimes when I say that, people get a little
what is that? What does that mean? Type of
they
thing.
get overwhelmed, right? And what we're trying to do is really meet everyone where they're at. So generational wealth to me could be something as, your family has never owned a home. And you'll be the first person to purchase a home in your family. And then through that, you'll be able to pass that down to the next generation. So to me, that's creating generational wealth. You don't necessarily have to be a millionaire or, own a bunch of properties like we do. It's really just meeting you where you're at and what are your goals so that you can have something that you can pass down to your future generations.
So let's lay it out. How do you go from basically renting, basically that's all you've ever done. You have a family of let's say 2 kids, and you've been here for 6 years and you're ready to get out because your kids are starting, you have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and you want to get them a yard and you want to actually invest in something instead of just rent continually. How do you get started? Where do you go from there? What's the process?
From there, the first step, if you want to purchase a home, is meeting with a lender because you need to figure out where you are. Is your credit good enough? How much money do you make compared to your debt, your debt to income ratio? So how much can you afford even to purchase? And, sometimes people can afford more than they want to spend. So it's not always some people always think that goes in the negative way of, oh, well, I want this, but I'm only going to be able to afford this. No, sometimes you're approved for much more than what you're comfortable in paying. So that is the first step, is getting with a lender because they're going to let you know all the programs they have, what you qualify for, and also if there's any programs out there like grants or different things to help you with your down payment, help you with closing costs, those different things. So it's just so important to connect with a lender first and really get, okay, where am I at? And if you don't qualify, it's okay. Then we have these credit programs. We have all these different things that can literally help you within a few months, typically. It's not going to take you years to get there. Everyone I've worked with has literally been months.
Wow. So how much would you say? Because I've heard that you need. We're still renting, and I've heard that you need a certain percentage for a down payment. You have to save up this much amount, or you need these assets to basically back things up with, or something like that. Is that true, or do you not actually need as much as most people would think, like what's out there being said?
Yeah, so it really depends on your situation, and that's like where I'm always like, you have to get with a lender, because I don't know your finances. I don't know, that's not my expertise, right? They're the ones who do it every day and are going to tell you. And sometimes it's not. That's what I'm saying. There's grants available. Like right now in our area, PNC has a $15,000 grant that they're willing to give towards your closing costs, and also, any down payment, anything. And the requirements are so minimum on it that it's really the only requirements that they said were they want you to buy in these 2 specific areas, because that's where they're offering the grant. So it sounds like it's pretty much open to anyone.
Wow. So, okay. So let's say that you have an amount that you've been approved for. Would you say, well, let's first go back. Would you typically say, like, what kind of time frame do you look at getting started? Like, going back to the renting scenario, say the lease is going to be up in, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, and you might want to be looking. Do you just start right away? And then or are you, when you're approved, is there usually a time constraint on till you have to reapply? Or is it just like, okay, I'm approved, and then I can start looking in 6 months? How does that typically work?
Yeah, so I think typically you're approved for around like 120 days, your pre-approval, and then after that you would have to go through the process again. No, I do not recommend, unless you are questioning and you're not sure where you're at, getting started 4 months in advance would be good, because if you are questioning whether your credit's good enough, whether you're going to be able to qualify, then that's a good time to start, because then you can get those questions answered, right? And if there are things that you need to work on, then you have months to do that. Otherwise, if you are just qualified, you're ready to go, I would say maybe a couple months, you should start looking beforehand, maybe 2.5. Because most closings happen within 45 days. So a seller is not going to want to wait 3 months for you to close on their house.
Gotcha. And do you need to get a real estate agent, or do you do it or is it better to do it yourself? What's the because I've heard kind of both ways from different people in my circle, and some of them are like, you have to get a real estate agent, otherwise you'll get screwed over by the buyer, or the seller. And then other times with the opposite side, it's like, no, you'll save yourself so much money if you don't get a agent. So how do you approach that, or what would you say to that?
So I always think you should have an expert. If you don't know anything about what you're doing, I would want an expert, right? Like, if I'm going to the doctor, I'm not going to go to my friend who's never gone to school and isn't a doctor, right? Like,
yeah, that's true.
Diagnose me. It's the same thing if I had to go to court. I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to sit there and represent myself. So I just think of it in that way, of all these other things that we use, and we use it without hesitation, right? We know we need this expertise. It's the same thing in real estate. This person works in it every single day. They know how to negotiate. They know what to look for in a house and point things out to you that may be concerning, or that you should look out for. But a big part of that is the negotiation. Where we live, it's definitely a seller's market. We've had low inventory for many, many years. So you want someone on your side that knows how to negotiate a deal and is going to win for you, because even if you have that in a market that is this competitive, you still may lose a lot of offers.
Should you consider building versus buying a home?
I mean, I think that's all just on preference. I think people don't realize what goes into building. It's not an easy process by any means. If you have the funds and the means to do that, then yeah, absolutely. Why not build your dream home? But sometimes you can take also a property that's already there and maybe spend less money because, and that's actually what I just did with my personal home that I bought back in 2022. I just bought an existing home. I renovated it from top to bottom, and then I sold it 2 years later and still was able to make $160,000 some dollars on it. It was like
Wow.
$1,000. So having that mindset and doing this day in and day out, that's also something, if a realtor specializes in that, they can kind of show you those things of how you can build that equity in versus if you build a brand new home, you're not going to have probably any equity in that. I can't imagine just because of the process. And a lot of people don't think about too, like you're bringing utilities onto that land. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. And we're talking, it's not thousands of dollars. It's like tens of thousands of dollars to get those things done.
So, okay. So just to sum it up, you first go to a lender, you see what you're approved for. They give you whatever the time frame until we recommended. You said it's typically 120 days, but that could differ based off of who you're talking to. And after that, you get with an agent, and then you said that it typically takes between 45 days after you get with an agent within that 120-day pre-approval mark. Is that what you said? Okay.
Yeah, so once you find your home, you can close in as little as 30 days. The average closing time is about 45 days.
Because of what you have to get it inspected. You want to make sure you dot all your I's and everything.
Yeah, so you will, say what inspections you want to do, which could be like home inspection, pest inspection. You might want to do a camera of the sewer line to make sure that's good, at least here where we live, because a lot of the homes are older, so the sewer lines are older, so you want to check that. Then you have municipality, they have requirements, right? They have dye tests, they have occupancy tests, and then you have an appraiser who's coming in for the lender and actually looking at the house and saying what needs to be done or what doesn't need to be done, versus on the lending. And so there's several steps. Like I said, you can definitely close within as little as 30 days if you have good lenders and title and all the things, right?
Yeah.
For us, paying cash, we can close in as little as 2 weeks. So It just depends on what you're doing.
So how did you get into this? Like, how did you get into real estate and, this whole journey that you've been on? What kind of got you into it?
So I actually owned my own business, and it was cell phone stores. And not too long after owning those, it's just something I fell into, right? It wasn't something I wanted to do, but it was an opportunity and I took it. And through that, I started looking for my own house because I had a child. And, me and the father I think we were already married or we were getting married. So we were kind of doing the whole thing, right? Like we had a kid together and we wanted to start planning for that future. So it was when I started looking for a house is when I realized, like, this is weird. Like, I'm so excited. And it wasn't just about, like, looking for a house for myself. I was just so excited every time I went in these houses because I didn't have a big budget. So I'm looking at houses that need work. They're outdated. They smell like whatever it is. They got red carpet, green carpet.
The pink sinks.
Yes, pink, blue tubs, all the stuff. And I would just be so excited to go in and look and like imagine like what it could be. So that's when I realized like there's something else here. Like this actually gets me excited. Like I enjoy this. And so from then I was like, I'm going to take my real estate, license I'm going to
Yeah.
like get involved in this. And I took the 2-week course and, took off from, being at my cell phone stores. And after that, I actually convinced myself that I didn't have the time. And I was like, why did I
Mm.
just put all this effort in, go to the classes for 2 weeks, and then now I'm not going to take the test because now I don't have time. And
Mhm.
honestly, I held myself back, and I find a lot of us do that. We sit in like comfortability and what we're doing versus truly going after like what we desire and what we know we enjoy. And it took me 8 years from that point to actually go get my real estate license and like start
Wow.
living my dream. Yeah.
So I guess you just had the cell phone stores during that 8-year period, or
Yep.
did you sell that? Okay. What was
Yeah.
that? What is that?
Then I sold it to my partner, like they bought me out.
Okay. How did you, what was so you said 6 years. What was, how, after you got, okay, so you took the test after 6 years later, right? What did you do from there? How did you grow it? How did you grow to what you are now?
Oh, it was a whole process. So I got my real estate license. I had already bought my first investment property and was a landlord by the time I got my real estate license. So I knew that I wanted to pursue it. I also, in that time frame, had bought that house that I talked to you about, my first house, and I sold that house within one day with multiple offers after doing
Wow.
renovation stuff to it. So that was in 2018 when I got my, or no, that was before 2018. I'm sorry. That was a couple of years before I became a realtor. So between those two things is what pushed me and gave me the courage and some confidence into like, okay, I have a rental property now. That's been going well. I also like essentially remodeled this house while I lived in it. It sold in one day for multiple offers, went over asking price. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to pursue this. But like I said, I got my license. I started learning the ropes, right? The contracts are very in depth. Our agreement, just the sale of agreement, is 14 pages long.
Wow.
So there's a lot to learn. You essentially always have to be an attorney to like understand all of the contracts, which people don't realize, right? This back end to
Mm.
it. They're like, oh, you just get to show houses and it's great. And like, people buy their dream homes and or their first homes and that just must be so neat. And it's like, no, there's this whole other side to it. So I did that. And then in 2019, me and my brother started flipping houses together. And from that, we learned very quickly that contractors are terrible and a lot of them do not do the work right. And on our second flip, we lost money because of that, because
Wow.
we refused to let the properties go on market without everything being done correctly. So we knew we were going to lose money, but we ripped the stuff out, we redid it, and made sure everything was right and looked good before we put it on the market because, we wanted to hold integrity in what we were doing.
Yeah.
And,
So, sorry,
go
go ahead. I was just gonna wanted to clarify one thing. So you only need a real estate license if you're taking a commission, like if you're representing it for other people. Is that the type of thing? Versus if you're flipping it for yourself, then you don't need a license for that. Is that right?
Well, you either need a license if you want to put it on the market, or you have to hire a realtor to put it on the market for you.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, you would have to sell it off market since you're not a realtor.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
sorry. You could.
yeah, from there, basically, we ended up deciding to start our own construction company. Now, I'm not saying this is the way you need to do it or how you
Wow.
should do it, but we were like, we knew how important like the construction end was, and we were having a really difficult time finding good contractors that we just decided we're just going to open our own. And, we're going to hire the people, we're going to train them, we're going to make sure the work's done right. So we did that, and we worked for a lot of clients because we wanted to make sure we kept our guys, working the entire time. Otherwise, we knew we would lose them. So we kind of sacrificed for a little bit of following our dream to build that foundation to then set ourselves up for success, for these guys to then transition over into doing the work on our houses only. But I will say what we did just kind of added another layer to it is we knew that a lot of our guys wanted to start their own construction companies. So we actually helped them open their own LLCs and guided them through that process so that now they can follow their dreams as well and not only have their own construction company, but they also had the best of both worlds, right? They were just starting out so that they could work for us and not struggle to get work until they built their businesses up and were able to get more work.
Yeah, that's very nice. You mentioned that you had a child when back when you had your cell phone business.
Yeah.
How did you, during all this time? I imagine it was pretty difficult to try to manage, the family work balance while also pursuing this dream of freedom and helping communities. How did you manage that aspect of it, like the family life and the entrepreneur life? Because entrepreneurship does require a lot of work.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. So I had my son already. He was a baby when I opened my cell phone store. So he literally would spend 12 to 16 hours a day with me at the cell phone store while I was trying to do the construction and painting and all these things to get this store ready to even be able to open. So as a baby, he was right by my side during all that, right? And I'm just feeding him in between and, taking care of him while I worked the entire time. And I guess I was fortunate in the sense that he was a baby at the time, so he wasn't super mobile. But even throughout those years of owning the cell phone stores, I got a nanny per se, and he would either be with me there at the cell phone stores all day. Like I had made him a playroom and I would do some schooling stuff with him while he was there for me. So it was pretty interesting because even though it was really difficult to, handle all of the different things, right? Like you said, you're trying to be an entrepreneur, you're trying to build a business, you have a child you're taking care of. I wouldn't change it for the world because I got all that extra time because I was an entrepreneur. I could bring my kid to work with me. I had the flexibility to do what I wanted to do for him. And I got all that extra time. And I think even for him, he thrived from it because from a very young age, people would say to me all the time, I cannot believe this kid. He can carry on a conversation with an adult at 7 years old. So he truly thrived where people thought oh, you're homeschooling him, he's not going to get socialization and he's going to lack in these different areas. And meanwhile, this kid was better at speaking than most adults.
That's usually how it is with homeschoolers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got the same thing from our 3-year-old because he's not in daycare and he's at home with us all the time. Yeah, there are some things now that are starting to pop up that we're gonna have to figure out. But how did the transition go there on the family balance into your cell phone business and then trying to get into real estate in that 6-year period? Obviously, you still had that, but when you really took off and it's and you went and took the test and then you transitioned, how did that help? How did that transition look?
So, I had another child in between all of this. Okay. So I have 2 now. My daughter was born in 2015 and I didn't start real estate until 2018. So I think sometimes there is no balance. That's just the way it is sometimes. I think sometimes you have to go all in on one area because you are trying to build something. so there will be those struggles, like, and you'll feel guilty about it.
Sure.
I end up putting my daughter in daycare because I'm a single mom, and, my son was in school, but she was obviously not. She was a baby. So I had to put her in daycare full time to be able to start building everything that I wanted to build. And that's just the reality sometimes, and I feel guilty about it because I'm like, I spent all this time with my son. I homeschooled him until he was 8 before I put him in school. And I didn't give her the same, but that's the way life is. You have to pivot at times and things are going to change. And you just, need to pivot with those things too, and with the changes that need to be done, I think. But I still believe that I have an amazing relationship with both of them, even though their upbringings were different.
Yeah, I 100% agree. When my my son was born, I was in the middle of starting a app. Well, it's a business I'm not ready to share yet, but it's still ongoing. But I was like, okay, we have an office downtown, and I told my wife, I'm like, I need to go all in on this. I know that he was just born and everything, but we can get this whole thing up and running in less than a year. He's not going to remember me not really being around. This is my opportunity right now to actually do this while he's developing. Well, what ended up happening was it's taken longer than a year, which that's just how things go. And I after realizing, wow, I'm never going to get those like special moments back, those one-time type of moments. When we have the second kid, I'm like, you know what? I can't keep going all in and missing out on all this stuff. I have to figure out, maybe I'm only available on the weekends or something, because I was completely like, it was basically like, I was over here for a year type of thing. And I definitely agree. There are times where you have a big opportunity, like something that I'm in right now, where it does take way more. You have to be like, okay, listen, I have to deviate from the regular schedule. There's this really big opportunity here, and this has to have all my attention right now, and explain that. And I think that the whole work-life balance thing, I think a lot of the people that talk about it are unrealistic or don't have kids. If you know what I mean? It's like, you don't really, or they've already made it like pretty big, and they don't technically really have to work anyway.
Mm-hmm. That's
Is
what I
that
was
like,
going to say. I think there's those sacrifices when you're in it, right? Because you're in it. Until you get to a point where you've built such a great team, or you don't really need to work, you can't totally dictate your schedule. I mean, you definitely have
right?
boundaries, guidelines, but sometimes like things are going to come up.
Yeah, especially when you have like a crisis or something come up where you have to drop everything, deal with that fire. And I had a guest on, and we were talking about something similar. And one of the things that he said was that talk to your family. Like, they don't need to necessarily know the nitty gritty what you're talking about, but communicate like, I have to be gone. This is for the family. This isn't for me. This is for our family, and this is what we're building. And I was like, you know what? That's a good idea, because I grew up where my parents were working all the time. They were trying to build their business. And it wasn't explained to me when I was little what they were doing until I was in like my teenage years, and mom would tell us all, yeah, dad's working really hard for you, stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, that could be a completely different perspective, because he was gone all the time. He was on his cell phone all the time, or gone all the time. But yeah, I think that is a subject that should be broken up and talked about a lot more, in terms of just that kind of reality.
I think it should be shared not only with your family so they can, envision and see what you're doing and what you're building and make them a part of that as much as you can. But also even with your team, I found as an entrepreneur and as a leader that I wasn't sharing it with my team either so that they could, have that buy-in and understand truly like the capacity and the largeness of this goal and this dream that we're going after of creating generational wealth within an entire community, right? Because as a leader, you can get stuck in like, you're just supposed to lead and you're supposed to make the decisions and you're supposed to do everything. But you really need to include everyone in that, because they need to know what their hard work is going towards as well.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, how do you do that with your team? Can you give me an example?
So we meet every week for our team meeting. And what I've done in that is I share the vision with them every time. I share updates with them every time we have a meeting. Like, this is what I'm doing now. This is what's going on. And not that they need to know, right? Because I'm handling it. I'm doing it. This is my part of the business, essentially, and my part of the job. But I keep reminding them and telling them, I want you to know this because I want you to know what we're doing and how we're moving towards this goal and how we're accomplishing it now. But, it's obviously not accomplished in full. And the other thing I do is I share our mission. We read it every single time that we have a meeting. And I also share our core values every single time we have a meeting.
So you would recommend, coming up with those as soon as you get started, or kind of developing them along the way? I mean, obviously you develop them along the way, but do you think getting started as a fresh entrepreneur, should you think about those things in the context of the product or service or whatever you're building from the get-go?
Oh, absolutely, because I think it's a roadmap. And I think if you don't have that, you're doing a disservice to yourself. Because it's almost like your why, right? And it's like, why are you, what's going to keep pushing you forward whenever that times get tough? Because they get tough, like real tough.
Yeah.
And it's all the time, no matter how big you grow, the problems just get bigger. So, I think it's great to have it from the beginning, and it doesn't matter if it's like perfect, right? It's about just doing it, putting it out there so you do know what you're working towards. And then, as you said, you definitely need to critique it as you grow because it is going to change as you grow.
How do you deal with those tough times? Can you give me an example if you are comfortable?
As far as business, general, personal. I know for me, it's always the same thing. It's if something's blowing up if there's a big problem or something in the company, or it's the same thing in my personal life. The first thing that I do is I'll pray and go to the Lord, ask him what I need to do in the situation, wait and try to listen for something, or turn to scripture or whatever, and just try to wait and figure and lean on him for that understanding. And usually just by doing that, just the action, it kind of clears everything out of the way, and it brings like the focus on you're the one in control of my life, and it kind of almost clears my head, and then it's like the answer of, this is the direction, this is where it should go. And it's not all the time like a voice or feeling or anything. Sometimes it's just logic. Like, I couldn't see this before. That makes sense. How do you deal? So it's the same for me. It's the same in my personal. It's the same in business. It's the same that I would recommend for anybody. But how do you approach that? Like, what is your kind of go-to approach? Yeah, so mine is the same as definitely God. I can't say that in every moment I always go straight to prayer. Like I wish I had that consistency with that
I'm
because
talking big things because I'm the same way. I'm talking like big problems. Like I guess for you, someone burned down a house and you just lost like all that investment. That would be a big issue, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I've learned through the years, the biggest thing is God in my life, for sure. It has totally changed me, helped me grow and become the person I am because I used to worry a lot more. I used to have, the mentality that I think a lot of us have when something happens to you. It's like, oh, this always happens to me and
Yeah,
poor
always
me.
like there that
Yeah.
you don't want to do that over yourself.
Yeah,
Sorry, go
because
ahead.
you honestly bring that into your life when you do those things and say those things. Like that's what you basically are telling your RAS in your brain. So that's the type of stuff it's going to show you because our brain is there to help us. And when we feed it these things, it thinks that those are the things that we want then. So it's really
Mm.
interesting how that all works. But for me, it's definitely been because now I've realized like I can only control what I can control. So like if a house burns down, like I can't control that. There's nothing I can do about that. Like it's done, it's
That's
over,
true.
it's gone, and now we just need to focus on how do we rebuild or what do we need to do with the insurance company to then get like the money back out of it, whatever we had it insured for. I'm very like pretty calm and collected with all of these types of situations in my life, but I'm not going to say that they don't affect me or, that I don't struggle because I do. But it's really, I just realized like none of it matters. It's about figuring out, okay, like how do I do this if there's a problem or what is the next step? Because everything else truly doesn't matter. I can sit there and worry about it all day long. I can, get upset about it and do all these different things, but how is that moving me forward?
It's true. Yeah, I know for me, I usually will, if I can remember to do this, I'll allow myself to be like maybe a minute or 2 or 5, depends on the thing, but between a minute to 5 minutes of feeling the emotional impact. Because I don't want to stuff it down because it can come out, it might come out without me even, realizing it. So if I can remember, I'll go find some space or go take a walk and just emotionally feel whatever the thing is, and then it's like, okay, let's actually look at how I felt it. That's good. We're moving on now, and um, let's see how we can act. Is this salvageable, or is this something that do we start over or do we just move on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and none of us are perfect, so I think we should all just remember that. Like, we're gonna not do it right. We're gonna fail, but you have to use those failures to learn from them and then use them to continue building. Because in my mind, honestly, if you're not failing, you're not really doing anything then.
Yeah,
And I tell my employees and everyone I work with that I'm like, I want you to fail. Like, if you're not failing, then I know you're not really doing anything and you're just sitting in comfortability.
yeah. I mean, you're not growing. That's
Uh-huh.
like you have to learn. I think the worst type of failure, at least for me, is the type that I cannot figure out what I'm supposed to get from it. Like I don't know why it failed. I did everything right. I'm looking for the thing I did wrong. Like, what did I do wrong? And it frustrates so. It's because that is like to me a true failure. If it's a true failure when I can't figure out what I failed and take that.
No, it's the same for me. Like, I do not do well in gray areas. I
Yeah,
need to know, like, I need to be able to figure it out. So no, same. And I still haven't figured out how to handle that any better because
I
if
haven't either.
yeah, if I can't figure it out, I'm just like, it's just like there all
It
the
just
time.
keeps going and it keeps going, and it's like a process that it's like I just need to solve this puzzle, and
Mhm.
until I solve it, there's this part in my brain where I cannot move on. I can't go forward.
So it's interesting. This just brought something in my head. So 2023, in November 2023, I was sleeping, and this will probably sound weird to some people, especially if you don't have a relationship with God, but I was sleeping and something woke me out of my sleep, and all it said to me was let it go. Like loud
Mm.
enough, like completely wake me up, out of my sleep. Like what the heck was that?
Yeah.
And it was just let it go. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, let it go. I'm like, what am I supposed to be letting go of? So, and it still bothers me to this day, but I think it was a general comment of what we just talked about when you can't figure something out. Like, I think it was just saying, like, let it go. Like, you know,
Mm.
maybe I'll figure it out years from now or, whatever. Maybe I'll never figure it
That's a
out, but
good
it's
point.
about, like, let it go.
Yeah, like you can't. It's maybe now's not the time to figure it out. Maybe it needs
Mm-hmm.
to just. Maybe you're right. Like it, just let it go for now, and you can always bring it back down. You're actually just reminded me of a one of those pictures of balloons that are up here on the ceiling, and you're down here, and you're holding all these balloons, and it was the same thing. It was you can let go of the balloons. You can always pull them back down from the ceiling when you're ready to deal with them. You just like
Mm-hmm.
that was a I love that concept because it's exactly right. Because you're we all can be holding on to all these different things, thinking that if we let them go, they're just going to disappear. I'm going to forget, which, might happen. You might forget, but it doesn't mean it's not still there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. And I like just mulled that over. Like I said, that was 2023 and I'm still thinking about it. Like,
Yeah.
was it anything specific? And I think it's not. I think it's like you just said, it's just let these different things go and maybe they come back, maybe they don't.
Yeah. That's a good point. You reminded me that I probably need to go have some meditation time or something. See if there's anything that
Mhm.
I need to let go. Because I know last time I did that, it kind of freed up so much space,
Mhm.
thinking, processing power in my brain that I was able to actually, because I wasn't as stressed anymore because of that, one of those things. It was like, I think it was two or three things. Has something to do with like forgiveness. I was holding on to things, um, which is kind of the same concept. You kind of have to let go and let it go let it fall on the Lord instead of holding on to it. Um, but it's so much more freeing when you do that because you're
Mhm.
able to actually focus on the things that actually matter to you. And sometimes the things that you're holding on to are not like they're actually holding you back, you
Mhm.
know, and they're holding you back from your dream or your goals or a relationship that could be better. And you just and you can't figure it out. But sometimes you're right. I think, yeah, you do have to just let it go sometimes without, and I would almost add to that and say, trust God that he'll figure it out type of thing, almost in some situations.
Yeah. And as you said, I mean, you're holding yourself back. So, even if you just clean that, knowing what I'm doing is holding me back and I don't want to hold myself back. Even like you said, forgiveness. If you don't forgive, you're holding yourself back as well.
Uh-huh.
Being able to move forward. Um, and I know that very well, just throughout the different things in my life that's happened and, realizing and thanking God that I finally got to a place of realizing that and being able to move forward because I couldn't move forward until I did those things. Truly, it wasn't just holding me back. It was like, it was such a negative in my life. And I was, doing things and like basically going down a downward spiral because I'm not forgiving this situation or this person or whatever. You know what I mean? I was only hurting myself. It's like, what do they call that? Drinking. It's like you drinking poison and expecting the other person to die from
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true because I feel like a lot of people in terms of forgiveness is they almost I mean I don't know, is it natural or not, but it's like, I'm going to hold this against you to hurt you, when it's not doing anything to the other person. It's doing all the things to you, though.
Yeah.
And somehow, I mean, I'm guilty. I'm sure many people are guilty. I'm guilty of it. But it's like, I'm going to stick it to you. I'm going to hold on to this because you don't deserve forgiveness. And it's like, yeah, the person probably doesn't deserve forgiveness. No, I don't think any of us deserves forgiveness. But you owe it to, like, at least let it go and let it fall on the Lord and trust him, but he'll deal with it. And but that can be so hard. That's not, we talk about it. People talk about it. People have books, but it's also goes back to that balloon thing. Like, we can let it go. We can forgive somebody, but then we see the person or whatever. We pull the balloon right back down. I got you. But it's like a process. You have to keep letting the balloon go, and eventually it stays up there. I feel like, at least kind of. I don't know if that makes any sense, the balloon concept.
No, it totally makes sense. It's funny because it's so true. And I just think about different situations. There's a lot of things I've had to let go this last year, and also forgive without, that's the other thing. People want an apology, or they want some type of remorse or something, to show them that okay, now I can forgive you, right? Because now you've pled to me and apologized and did all these things. And it's once again, you may never get those things, and you're not doing it for the other person. You're doing it for yourself, so that's what you need to remember. And, but yeah, your analogy is perfect in my opinion, because it's so true. You see them, something gets brought up, you think of something, and then you're like, oh, I'm holding on to that again.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just still thinking about it. Wow. Okay, so let's move into the programs that you've created that teach kids entrepreneurship. Tell me a little bit about that, like an overhead, and then let's dive into some meat.
Yeah, so basically we're still in the very beginning stages. I have gone into the Keysport High School and started teaching the kids about passive income and just what that looks like, right? Because I know we're not taught that. I wasn't taught that in school. That's why I'm passionate about it and want to teach the kids this so that they can have a better foundation than I did, growing up and taking all these years to figure these things out. I want everyone else to be in a better place than I was, and I want them to get there quicker than I did, So that's why I'm starting to teach these things, and that will go into, credit, about, how that affects you, whether you're buying a house, a car, and the different things, how to budget, and just talk about, too, I think the other big thing is you're taught in school that you need to go to school for all these years, you graduate, then you need to go back to school again.
True.
Just to graduate. And you don't have to do that. And for people like me who weren't interested in school and knew that they weren't, I felt like there was something wrong with me because I didn't want to do that. That wasn't my path. And I don't want other kids to feel that way. I want them to know that, what are your dreams? What do you enjoy? Go after that. Or maybe you want to go into a trade. Go after that. Whatever it is, I want them to feel comfortable enough to be able to, make those hard choices and not just go with, what their parents tell them or what the schools tell them or the teachers tell them, because they're afraid that someone's going to be upset with them, or, they're not doing what they're supposed to. Oh, and the other big thing too, which we touched on, is schools teach you that you shouldn't fail and you shouldn't mess up and you shouldn't make mistakes.
100%. Right. Yeah, that's true. I have it. And it instills a fear to not even try.
Yes.
Yeah, that's I've never thought about that. I do, going back to the whole college thing, 100% agree. I got, well, I was homeschooled, but even in the homeschool community, it's the same similar type of thing. I mean, it's not as big as it is in public school. I went to public school, but then we transitioned homeschool later. But I know for like my grandparents and the parents of some other friends, like they were pushing for like the whole college thing and everything, which is I don't have a problem with going to college, but you're right, it's not something that you have to do. I mean, I guess I would say if you want to be a doctor, then that's something that you probably want to go learn how to be. You don't want to do YouTube videos and research and stuff like that to be a doctor. But for something like, starting a company, going into real estate, there's lots of helpful information out there that you technically don't have to go to a college to gain that information. And going back to the whole economics thing, you're absolutely right. Public schools do not teach economics. They'll do like college courses will go teach that. But as a kid, I would have loved to have been taught in third grade or second grade or even first grade. You can start there and go all the way up of like, basic currency stuff, saving, the reward of saving and then going out and buying something that you saved for, but not overspending. Like with my 3-year-old right now, he is saving for his favorite bar of soap, and it's $6. And he has, I think, $2.50 now. But we're trying to teach him, come up to us, ask us for a job, and ask us how much that will pay, and weigh out the job options, what you can go do. That's where we're starting right now. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think I just think that's amazing. You're doing that at such a young age and giving them that, foundation. And that's what I've tried to do with my son and my daughter. And they're only so interested, so you can only do so much. But
for sure,
my son definitely, and my daughter, she's just younger. So I guess I always use my son as an example just because she's not on the same level yet. He's 16. He gets it. He's getting older. And he'll talk about these things, with his friends or with his teachers. And it just brings me so much joy to know that, like, okay, when I think he's not paying attention, he is. And it is getting in there. And it doesn't mean that he's going to be an entrepreneur or anything like that. And that's okay with me. It's just more of, like you said, I don't have a problem with college or anything. It's just more of still giving them that foundation, though, so that they have it and they can use it. Whereas, I know for me, like I said, and I've talked to many people, you just don't have that foundation. And that's what I'm trying to, like, bridge that gap, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important. I feel like I don't understand why it's not being taught. I mean, even in the homeschool community, it's not being taught, which you would think it would be, but it's not. And that's because, well, another thing too is homeschool community, I guess people think that there are a lot of entrepreneurs, which I don't know the research, but I know in my own community, there were not that many entrepreneur families, which would make sense because if you're an entrepreneur, then the whole economic concept is you're always going through the process because you're having to ultra manage your finances in a different way because you're self-funding, bootstrapping your projects. Whereas if you're doing a 9-to-5, then I guess it wouldn't be as much of a thing on your mind to teach your kids because it wouldn't be as important, I guess. But it still doesn't make sense why public schools wouldn't be doing this. And you're right. The fear of failing and not even try is 100% a thing. And that's something that can be instilled at a young age. And then you carry that the rest of your life until, some kind of dramatic thing happens and you're almost forced to face the fear to go for this thing, which I've heard entrepreneur stories where that happens a lot of the time. They're kind of forced into the entrepreneurship journey, whether it be getting out of a bad relationship and then suddenly like now you have to do something. What am I going to do? Which has been common on the show. But yeah, I love it. So is your like course for the kids, what ages or what grades does that start off, or how did you figure that out?
So that the high school dictated that. So it's
Okay.
in the seniors. So which makes sense to me.
That's still good though. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's good because you're talking 16, 17-year olds, so they're not yet starting their life, but they're going to be doing that soon. So I think it's the perfect timing to start setting them up for that success. And yeah, I would love to see it happening much younger, but if we're at least getting them before they even get out of high school, I'm
True.
happy about that. And I just
Yeah.
think that these concepts too are going to be difficult even for a 16 or 17-year-old to understand, and trying to really break that down into the basic level.
True. Especially if they haven't been kind of already taught it
Mm-hmm.
or encouraged at home. I think at home is probably a big one too, um, to not fail. I think, um, because being an entrepreneur isn't just about going out and starting something. It's 100% about having a mindset of being okay with failing. And that kind of should go out, kind of should spread out throughout all your life, you know?
Yeah, no, it should. And that's what I try to teach my son all the time when he doesn't like win a basketball game or something. I'm like, okay, what went wrong in this game? What could you do better? What could your teammates, you guys as a team could do better? Instead of being like super upset or mad about it or whatever, because that's not going to change anything. Like, let's reflect, let's look at this and see what we can change for the next game so that you can do better, with your team. And I think sometimes, he probably gets annoyed by that, to be honest, because he just lost a game. So, of course, there's that emotional attachment there and being upset. But I've just continued to say the same things over and over because I'm just truly trying to teach him, like, you're going to fail and it's okay to fail.
Mhm.
This is a part of life. So, like, now what did we learn from it? What did you see in the game that maybe you could do better? And it's not about putting it all on him. It's just evaluating the whole team and seeing how they can work better together.
100%. And I also think, I know I'm guilty. I've been guilty of this in the past with teams that I've worked with. And, but you have to come at it objectively as best as you can, meaning, you have to be able, because so sometimes we want to blame other people. Oh, it
Mm-hmm.
didn't work out because that person failed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when in reality it was probably your fault, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And but there are times where it could legitimately be another person's mistake and not
Mm-hmm.
yours. And you
Yep.
have to be when you're emotional, you want to blame someone else. You don't want to confront it, even though you know it was your fault.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think just trying to figure out a way to like zoom out and just or get rid of the emotions, go take a walk or something, and then come back and ask the series of questions like, what could I have done better? And I think it's a different approach if you're the team leader or
Mm-hmm.
the leader versus if you're in the team. I think it's a different approach because if you're the CEO, well then almost everything comes back to you
Mm-hmm.
in some area. Maybe not the full thing, but maybe you didn't evaluate that person well enough. And you let that person do some job and they did a very crappy job. That comes back on you, right? But it also lands on that person. So you're kind of sharing in that. but it's still up to you to fix it, not necessarily the person.
Absolutely. And that's why I have these conversations with him too, because he is the leader, and
Okay.
he has to, even if he's not the one bringing down the ball and being the point guard, right? He does do that part of it too, but everyone on that team knows and has known for years he's the leader. Every parent, every coach, everyone is like, Landon is the leader. He stays calm under pressure and all the chaos. Like, he makes good decisions and he doesn't really let that stuff overwhelm him. So just trying to instill that part too. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that is the other part of it of, you are the leader. And as the leader, even if you didn't do something wrong, you basically lead this entire team. The way you talk to the boys, the way you are, the way you handle yourself, they feed off of that, so you have to then not only reflect and look at it as a whole, but then how can you try to instill these things in your team, right? And how can you try to get them to do the things that they need to do? Because that's essentially, like you said, your job, whether you're the CEO, whether you're the leader, it's falling back on you, even if it wasn't you.
Exactly. Okay. We're going to wrap up. I think this was a great episode. So, Tara, can you tell me a little bit of what the future looks like for you? What does this year look like? What's something that you're trying to accomplish this year?
So the biggest thing I'm passionate about is just getting into the schools, getting into the community, and creating different events where we can make the events not only free, but, start teaching people about generational wealth at all ages. Because, the thing is, you don't have to start when you're young. You can start at any point in time. And I just really want people to understand that and know that, because maybe they're 60 years old and they've always wanted to buy their first house, but they haven't done it yet,
Good.
That can still be done. And, that's why we want to get not only into the schools, but into the community as well. So that's like my biggest goal for this year, is just really building that out and seeing how we can improve it and continue getting it out to more and more people, because the hope is, like, let's create something that people can use all over the world, for areas like what we have, this specific area that's very rundown, low income, needs revitalization and also isn't getting that right. Like you said, if you have parents or different people are teaching you this, great. But, the parents and all the people don't know about this either. So it's definitely not taught. So that's like my goal. And then the other part of it is just, getting on these different podcasts, because I want to get it out there. There might be other people interested in this and hear this and think, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I want to be a part of that, So that's been another goal of mine, is just getting on podcasts, putting it out there, and being able to get it out to the world so that people know what we're doing, right? Because how else will they know what we're doing?
How can people get more information on this or follow you on this?
Yeah, so it's just my name, which is probably a little more difficult, Tara Zalewski, which I'm on, every single platform, LinkedIn, Facebook. But I guess an easier one would be our website, which is rtz.one. So that's rtz.one, spelled out O-N-E. That's a little more simpler if you can't spell Zalewski.
Perfect. And yeah, if someone was going to take away, what's the one point that person should take away from this episode?
I think the one point is never discourage yourself. Like, if you haven't started yet, start today. As I was saying, it doesn't matter how old you are, what you have going on in your life, but you need to start now. So don't let it discourage you if you feel like you're too old or you don't know enough, or whatever the excuse may be, because really that just comes down to it. It's an excuse, essentially. And don't be afraid of failure, like we talked about, or getting uncomfortable. Like, this is absolutely what you need to do.
Awesome. Well, Tara, thank you so much for this episode. This was great. It was great talking to you, great getting to know you. And I think this will be very valuable to people.
Welcome to Eric's podcast. Dive into conversations about life, family, and business with your host, Eric. Whether you're looking for practical advice, personal stories, or just a little inspiration, Eric's got you covered. Tune in every week to join the journey and get ready to elevate.